Our meditation this morning will be offered by the very beautiful Peggy Villeneuve. So Peggy, if you can unmute yourself.
Did I do that right? Yeah. Well, as we all have had, I've had a great deal of time in these last recent months to listen for and to wonder about the majesty and care and graces of God. I believe our loving Creator reveals himself over and over in ways quite beyond my understanding and out of the realm of my imagination. But I've also come to realize that God speaks to us of his love, his patience, his diligence, his care, might, joy, glory, his need, his prudence, his wisdom, his kindness, his generosity, his faithfulness through everything in our human world. Everything can be heard if we listen to the freely given gifts with open heart. If we listen, we can hear what he is communicating to us. This is a poem that I wrote to express my beliefs and feelings about listening for and to hearing the music of life, God in all things. Be still. Listen. I am here. Listen for me. Hear me. In the single glistening tear, in the stroking of a tiny warm hamster, in the soft smile of a teacher, in the stillness of an old woman sitting alone. Hear me. Hear me in the shivering of fear, in the outstretched hand of need, in the gritted teeth of a brave soldier, in the inky black dreams of exhaustion. Hear me in the opening of a flower, in the scent of warm, fresh bread, in the determination of rain, in the blur of vibrant colors of a bird in flight. Hear me in the hiss of the water receding back over the shoal, in the tinge of pink in the morning sky, in the emptying of colors from the sky at night, in the grasp of a hand, in the fragrance of a rainbow, in the empty hollow of a tree, in the stone ledge of safety, in the low murmur of prayer. Hear me in the scribble of words on a tablet, in the firmness of books lined on a shelf, in the look of a surgeon as she reveals the truth, in the stature of a stubborn, pouting child. Hear me. In the paddles and ball laid on the table, ready for play, in the towel carelessly tossed on the rail to dry, in the hot burn of sunshine, in the first shock of the cold ocean, in the gentle caress of love, in the playful leap from the swing, in the low bow of the priest, in the cheer of a crowd. In all these things and more, hear me, listen for me. Listen, I am here, be still.
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you for your gift and thank you for sharing it with us. I guess I would say one of the blessings of COVID is that we get to hear more writings from you because you have the time. So on to our book. This is the opening day of I Heard God Laugh. And I am really excited about this book because Matthew Kelly is a great man, or maybe I should say he is becoming a great man. I'm guessing it was about 20 years ago that my husband and I were celebrating a wedding anniversary, and we decided to spend a few nights down at the Doryman Inn, which is a cute little bed and breakfast on the beach in Newport Beach. The inn had bicycles that you could take. So we decided to ride our bikes one evening down to 5:30 Mass at Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And at the end of Mass, they announced that there was going to be a guest speaker that night, a young man from Australia. So Tom and I decided to go and to listen. And there he was, this very young, handsome, and very slender Matthew Kelly. He was amazing. And I distinctly remember my husband and I talking about what a gift he was, being so young, so energetic, and so wise. So we knew back then that he was going to do great things. So here we are 20 years later, and I'm still watching him become what God has created him to be. I'm still watching him do great things for God. I do have to say that I do take a little bit of comfort that over the years, his body has changed like mine. So neither one of us have the girth that we used to have. He's a happy little chubby fellow now. So along with all of his speaking engagements and his professional marketing company, Matthew Kelly founded Dynamic Catholic back in 2009. And the mission statement of Dynamic Catholic reads, to energize the Catholic Church in America by developing world-class resources that inspire people to rediscover the genius of Catholicism. So since 2009, Dynamic Catholic has distributed over 5 million books, most at very little cost. They usually are about $2 to $3 a book, which also speaks of Matthew Kelly's generosity. He wants to spread the love and the gospels of Jesus, and he wants it to be affordable so that all people can get it. Another thing I love about Matthew Kelly is that he's not just going around tooting his own horn or selling his own books. Dynamic Catholic has also purchased the printing rights to various different authors, books that they believe are the best in class and that they want to see distributed by the masses. A few years back, I was the chairperson for a large fundraiser for the Loyola Institute. The speaker that was going to be honored that year was Father Richard Hauser. He's a writer. He was a friend of mine from Omaha, Nebraska. So I learned that Dynamic Catholic had purchased the rights to Father Hauser's book In His Spirit. So I called to ask if they would give me a super good price so that I could give all of the 350 members coming a copy of the book. Well, Dynamic Catholic gifted me all of the books, no cost. And then if you might remember, last year we read that same book. And again, I reached out to Dynamic Catholic and he again sent us 80 books for free. So what's not to love about Matthew Kelly? He's creative, smart, he's faithful, and he's incredibly generous. I'm also very grateful this year to Monsignor Urell for purchasing these books for St. Timothy's. He got 1,000 books. I think there's 2 left in the chapel. So also one other note that I just found out yesterday, Dynamic Catholic's Best Lent Ever is based on this book. So if you sign up for Best Lent Ever, you're going to get an email every day with a greeting, and there's going to be a little video that also applies to this book. So if you want to enhance what we're doing, February 17th is Ash Wednesday. It'll begin that day. So Matthew Kelly begins this book by having us reflect on our lives thus far. He says, life doesn't always turn out the way we expect. In some ways, it exceeds our expectations, and in other ways, it disappoints. And I know that for myself. I often reflect back on my family of origin, and I wonder how I made it thus far. My dad was one of 11 children, and his father was a coal miner. They were literally dirt poor. The house that my father was born in had 3 rooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a sleeping room, where they all slept in just a few beds. 8 children were born in that house. My dad's family later moved down the holler near Charleston, West Virginia. And I do remember visiting that house when I was a young girl. The bathroom, or as they called it, the outhouse, was situated out back. And I remember having to go to the bathroom one night and being so scared that I held it all night long because I didn't want to go to the outhouse in the dark. And all my future visits were all done at dusk. So I never had to do that again. So my father, he tried to escape this poverty by joining the Marines when he was 17 years old, and they dismissed him within a couple of weeks when they found out he was underage. He had to wait another year, and then he finally joined the Air Force, where he spent the next 25 years of his life living in security, a bed of his own, enough food to go around, and they actually paid him a salary. My father also had very little formal education. He worked very hard in the military. He received his GED, and then he got several certificates. First, he became a radio operator, and then all of a sudden he was a radar technician. Well, when my dad retired after 25 years, he was an air traffic controller. His last station was in Bangkok during the Vietnam War. So I'm, as you may have noticed, very proud of my father. I learned a lot from my poor, uneducated father. I learned to be reliable and to work hard. So with Dad's example of reliability and hard work, I found myself the vice president of purchasing for a manufacturing company at the age of 25. Never did I expect that. It exceeded my expectations. At 27, I got married and began having children. Another really hard period of work. But being a mother also exceeded my expectations. Who knew that you could ever love children so much? But it didn't take long until the interruptions began. I had a critically ill child. I had several hiccups in my marriage. And then there was those teenage years, wondering how I ever survived those. You know, there was college tuitions, family feuds, parents dying, and then most currently, the selling of my home that we've lived in for 36 years. And then I'm not even going to mention right now the C word, COVID. So I took note and paused when Matthew Kelly asked, "Are you thriving or just surviving?" And then he invites us to try something new. Matthew Kelly says that there might be a piece missing, and he uses the example of a jigsaw puzzle. Now, for those of you who were at the last meeting and saw our slideshow of holy moments, you might have noticed an odd picture that I put in. It was a jigsaw puzzle. It was the hardest jigsaw puzzle I have done in my entire life. It was a picture of a place called Horseshoe Bend, where we had visited over the summer. It's all that red dirt, stone, rock, and water. So everything was reds and blue. But when it came down to the last piece, it was nowhere to be found. So after spending a little bit of time on our hands and knees, my husband found the piece under the couch. What an amazing feeling it was to have it complete. Matthew Kelly writes that the essential piece that most people are missing is a vibrant spirituality, care of our soul. That is what makes us complete. He writes that your soul is your life source. Our soul integrates and harmonizes every aspect of our humanity. It reorients us towards what matters most. And he asks, how well have you been taking care of your soul? And I had to take some time to reflect on that. I love when he wrote, our bodies are constantly barking orders at us. Feed me, wash me, clothe me, pleasure me, feed me again. So this is certainly what's been happening to me, especially during this time of COVID. Walk me, feed me, exercise me, feed me more, comfort food, maybe a martini, feed me more. Okay, take another walk. So this has been my routine. All of this while the soul sits quietly, faithfully, and patiently waiting. Matthew Kelly writes, there is no better time than right now to nurture our inner life, discover our spiritual needs, and feed our souls. And I'd like to emphasize this point because I have never in my life found this to be more true. We are currently sitting betwixt and between the rising number of COVID cases in Orange County with the somewhat available vaccine, although a couple of people say now they've had it. We're living in hope, but the hope is still a bit foggy and far away. So when will we all be able to get it? What age is going to get it? How about that second dose? And then how much longer are we going to be asked to wear masks? How much longer the social distancing? And then my forever question, when can we be together again? When can I greet someone, see their face, reach out and embrace them? So Matthew Kelly is right. The time is right now. And through this book, he wants to invite us to new ways of nurturing our soul, new ways of prayer. My most very favorite line in the section of this book is, in prayer, we learn how to love and to be loved because we discover that we have been loved, are loved, and will continually be loved by God. I'm leading a group this year through the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, which is a 9-month retreat. We started in September. Right before the holidays, we had a large group sharing time where one of our elderly gentlemen, I'm guessing he's in his 80s, stated that he feels that he has, in the first time in his life, learned how to pray. And I was deeply touched. He is a very faithful man who's been praying all of his life. But I believe for the first time, he's learned a way of praying that mostly showed him that he is loved. He got to experience that love, and he will continually be loved by God throughout the rest of his life. He's been so touched and inspired that he's taking up writing poetry, and it's very powerful. He's committed himself to nurturing this inner life into feeding his soul. Matthew Kelly writes, there's a difference between knowing about a person and knowing a person, and it's an enormous difference. He says there's also a difference between knowing about prayer and experiencing prayer. So let's put that in the context of Jesus. There is a big difference in knowing about Jesus and knowing Jesus. So how do we get to know Jesus? Through relationship with him, through communication with him, experiencing him. All of these things are called prayer. Matthew Kelly writes, there are questions that the world cannot answer only through soul work. Through prayer, can these questions be answered between you and God? He also writes to treasure your questions. And there are many priests and teachers who state the only people of faith that they're afraid of are those who have no questions. So how do we treasure a question? I've kept a running list of questions for God. I always say, if and when I get to the pearly gates, I have a couple questions. For many, many years, the number one question was, what is up with menopause? What in the heck were you thinking? When I was going through menopause, I had teenagers along with aging parents. I had mood swings and hot flashes. So I still want the answer to that one, but it's not at the top of my list. The question that I treasure, that is at the top of my list, is, why was my son created a gay man? And why do so many people in the LGBTQ community suffer? What is the purpose of that? So you may wonder why I treasure this question, because I am certain that God is going to have the most compassionate and loving answer for me, something that maybe I have not yet considered. In the meantime, he's asked me to live my question, and I'm going to live that question with the same loving and compassionate answer that I'm seeking from him. Matthew Kelly writes, here is one thing worth pondering. The being of something changeable, which is you, is not only what is, but what it still can be. You are not only who and what you are today, your essence or being also includes who you are capable of becoming. You still can be. because you have amazing potential. So we're going to go ahead and break down now into groups. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a really amazing conversation. I'm going to go ahead and say our closing prayer. And then I got a couple of people that texted me saying, can the people that got the vaccine please explain the process and how they got it? So Charmaine can speak to that. So can Karen. And then Charmaine's going to send me a link about some more information. So again, thank you to the new people that came. I hope you enjoyed your time. We are going to end with a poem, and it's called Are You Paying Attention? And it's by a poet by the name of Shiloh. And it reads, everything comes from this feeling. Do you feel it? Are you paying attention? This fire inside of you, it can burn you into ash and you will float away in tiny pieces, or it can fuel you. It will fuel you. It will be the force to guide you. It will be the light to find you. What do you want? Stop worrying. What is it your heart is telling you? Listen. Everything comes from this feeling. Feel good. You are here. You are amazing. Do you feel it? Are you paying attention? Amen.
Did you order lunch?
With that, I'm going to turn it over to the ladies that have had the vaccine.